G'day everyone and welcome to the Trademate Sports Betting Podcast. Today I'm joined by the Poacher, a professional football bettor and tipster with decades of experience in the bookmaker industry. Liam, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Alex, good to speak to you.
Very, very good, mate. Maybe you just want to kick things off, let people know, I guess, your role in the betting industry at the moment, how you got to where you are, and maybe a little bit about your journey.
Okay, well, I started working in the betting industry probably in 1996, so it's a long time ago now. I started working in betting shops. Basically, just at that time, there was no computers, it was all just very manual. So I started out marking a board. There would be we'd get this loudspeaker in with someone calling out the shows, prices, odds. So we just write it on a board for everyone to see. So it was pretty basic stuff. So just graduated from there then to working behind the counter and settling up bets. That time there would be no, the bets had to be done manually. So it was a slow process, and probably, there was a bit of room for error. So then eventually became assistant manager and manager of betting shop, and then progressed on to profiling, just monitoring kind of hot customers, as we call them. So basically customers who are winning customers, I suppose you could say. So that's been that was my latest role in the betting shop.
Yeah, wow, okay. So you obviously advanced up the ranks in the betting shop. What was like some of the, I guess, the biggest things you learned? I mean, dealing with I guess some of the sharpest bettors, you might say. Like, what were some of the things I guess you learned from them?
Yeah, I suppose you learn a lot. I suppose going back into the late 90s, early 2000s, it was a lot easier to get bets on. You had, there wasn't much online. Bookmakers, betting shops especially, I suppose betting shops would be my main area. They were willing to take a bigger bet than they would now, because there was no Bettor, it was only just coming on stream. So if someone came in with 500 or 1,000 euros or pounds, whatever, they were taking pretty almost time. But as time has gone by, it's less and less. You if you went in now to a betting shop with 1,000 euro, or obviously online, you definitely wouldn't get it. I couldn't see how you get it on. Well, on racing, maybe some football, but big high profile football games, fine, you will. But the margin is well built in with betting shops. So I wouldn't advise having 1,000 euros on with a betting shop unless you're getting on at a very, very early show.
Yeah, okay. Anything that, I guess, I assume you might have, been doing some betting yourself before you started working at the betting shop. Is there anything that, I guess, surprised you looking back that, I guess, something that people who have never worked for a bookmaker or a shop would imagine happening?
I suppose in the early days, I suppose there was a lot of cash flying around. So I was surprised at the stakes. We regularly had people who could just come in and could ask for maybe 5,000 euros or pounds on sport, more so football probably than horse racing and greyhounds. But I did see, what surprised me a lot, I suppose, was that someone could come in with 500,000 cash over the counter and be taken pretty quickly. That probably surprised me. But the thing about it, those type customers were probably rare enough. And when they did come in, they regularly won. So I suppose from the early days, that was one thing when you see a guy coming in having 5,000 on, say, I don't know, some a Premier League team at that time, it was basically match odds. Over under goals wasn't a big thing. So you tend to take note. You'd say, how could you have 5,000 euro on a Premier League match? Without because it's so high profile, and you'd say that that it knows what the true odds should be. But Bettor wasn't as prevalent at the time, or there wasn't as much information out there. So, and I got to know sharp hunters betting on horses, football, that kind of stuff. So that probably surprised me that the people could make money in it. So that's probably how I got more into betting myself.
That's really interesting. So you're saying that you couldn't really I guess like one of the most accurate measures you can use to profile whether you think someone's going to be a long-term winner is if they're beating, closing lines of the sharpest bookies, or maybe the exchanges too. Is that, was that kind of difficult for you to like profile customers if there was no like real efficient closing line or anything like that?
Yeah, it probably was at that time. Yeah, so they tended to be able to get their bets on easier, whereas now I would say it's very easy. If we customer came into a shop over the last few years and wanted to say greyhounds was a big thing actually. We had a few guys come into shops and they'd have on their phone, on their smartphones, then we could have Betdeck or Betfair open. So the shows on greyhound racing, particularly greyhound racing for some reason, the shows the dog would shorten up in price. The odds would shorten on Betfair or Betfair before it would shorten in the shop. So they were seeing the price shorten in the shop or on Betfair. So they were getting on with us maybe 10, 15 seconds before. And so they were getting a 10, 15-second edge. So we quickly kind of noticed it. But they were in certain shops where staff may not know that, they weren't taking any notice. People were getting a nice edge on greyhounds for quite a while.
Yeah, no, really interesting, mate. So how do you want to explain like the segue from finishing up working in the betting shops to what you're doing nowadays?
Well, I suppose I could see that it was getting, true. I could see in the shops it was, people are finding it harder and harder to get on in shops. I kept seeing customers come in, wanted €200 on a horse or a greyhound or whatever, and we basically had to tell them, no, sorry, they won't give you. Look, you can have 50 euros, 25 euros at SP. That's all they do, and you'd have customers giving you out to this and that. Plus, also, I think in Ireland and also in the UK, I would say betting shops are more like mini casinos. And actually, going back to years ago, where they're real sports, it was all sports betting. Now it's more, casino, roulette, virtual racing is huge. So once over the last few years, that started to come in. So I just felt, no, I just wanted to get out of this and just concentrate more on, football. Actually, funny, horse racing was the thing I bet on most. But as the years went by, I just got more into football betting. It just felt easier to get on and through the exchanges. So I just said, look, I'm just going to have a go at football betting, and it's going pretty okay.
Yeah, nice, mate. And with your football betting, you're specializing in two leagues, I guess, La Liga and La Liga 2. I'm sorry if that's not what it's called nowadays. I feel like
well, Spanish Segunda, La Liga 2.
Spanish Segunda, yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to stuff up the pronunciation, mate. I'll let you do that bit. But yeah, I know you're doing some other stuff in like Ireland, and I believe you dabble in a few other leagues. Like, do you think that's why you've been successful so far? Like, just because you're focusing on a couple of leagues rather than, you see certain tipsters, or I mean, even I guess betting syndicates is maybe a little bit different because there's a lot more people. But do you think that's why you've, been a bit more successful, maybe just because you've been focusing primarily on a couple of leagues and getting to know them really thoroughly?
Yeah, I do think so, definitely. Yeah. Originally, I was betting on Germany. I was betting on Germany Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2. I would have been betting in both French leagues, the Italian leagues, Spain, and it was just taking up too much of my time. And I was always drawn to Spain, so probably than any league. And the Segunda really much, because I just find that the Segunda is probably, it's a very even league, and on any given day, the top 4 teams playing the teams at the bottom 4. It's very, very regularly where you get, you can get surprising results. Well, surprising to the betting, but not so much to me. So I just felt, rather than spending too much time on lots of leagues, it was better to concentrate my time on just a few. So it's worked pretty well. Probably the Segunda is probably, even over the last year or so, I've probably spent more and more time looking at Segunda, and for the coming season, I'd hope to develop it even more. So that's where lots of my profits have come. So for the coming season, that'll be a big part of my betting.
Yeah, how would you, I guess, look at people who are? I mean, there are lots of tipsters I notice out there that are maybe doing like Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Liga, Serie A, so like the big five main leagues. Like how, and then they're probably doing Champions League and Europa and stuff like that on top of it.
Yeah,
Would you, I guess, view? I mean, I guess it's all like kind of different approach. I mean, if you can cover those leagues in depth and find an edge there, then sure. But would you rather like maybe specialize in a couple of leagues and maybe get a higher ROI than maybe like little edges all over the place? Like how do you view those, tipsters that are looking at so many different leagues?
yeah. Personally, myself, I prefer concentrate on just a fewer leagues because I think time wise, if you like, I put an awful lot of time just into Spain, into French league on, and I would take a look at it. And but even at that, I could spend from the Tuesday or Wednesday before weekend games. I would start looking at the Spanish games and also the French League One. They might be part of the main leagues. But if I had to look at all the other leagues, I'd just be afraid, as you said, I couldn't see how I get the same ROI concentrating on 5 or 6 leagues as you would in 3 leagues. Some guys can do it. They probably have, maybe they have outside help, or they developed software that they can narrow it down. But I think if you concentrate, for me, concentrating on these leagues, you get to know the teams really well. You get to know their little quirks. You get to know what players are in and out. You get to know, say, certain teams. For example, Aria in the second last season started really badly. I think they lost their first 5 or 6 games, and then went in a streak. They went for 15 games unbeaten. So, I think by narrowing it down, you'll spot that. Whereas if you're looking at 5 or 6 leagues, I'm not so sure you would spot a team like that. Their results are poor, but they're actually playing better than the results. The results seem. So I think by just looking at 1 or 2 leagues, you'll be able to focus in on that better.
Yeah, so your approach is, I guess, very heavy analysis based. Like you're just watching a lot of football each weekend. Do you wanna maybe just explain your process for finding value in those leagues?
Yeah, it is. So basically, I look at the fixtures, as I said, come the Tuesday or Wednesday. I would have, I suppose, the season goes on. Beginning of the season, I would have teams that I'd be, people probably notice. I back a lot of the same teams week in and week out, either for goals or back them in the match market. So I would just price them up themselves, basically price up the matches themselves, and I price up the goals markets. Then I go on to Betfair and compare them, possibly not for the Sunday early in the week because the liquidity is too low. So I would look at the odds, look at my odds, and if wherever, often there's a big discrepancy between them. So I'd focus in on those matches and just say, why is such a team so big, or why is such a team so small, or why do they not see goals? Which a lot of time I suppose more so in the second is known as a low scoring league, whereas I like to look at games for goals because I find that it's that's where you're getting the value there. And so that's my process, is basically price up the games myself. I have notes, and I have a lot of notes on each team, and then I take it from there. I look at, as we get nearer the day, look at team news, look at if there's any big players out, suspensions, injuries, whatever. And sometimes I wouldn't be totally put off a team if they had lots. It depends. Some teams can made. You could read that they have 3 or 4 injuries, but the players coming in may just. I view them maybe just as good. So I wouldn't make it a huge negative that certain players are out. So that's basically my approach.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about, I guess, the differences in pricing that you might, uh, find between your prices and bookmakers or exchange prices? Because I guess there can be times where, mate, let's just say that you price a team at 2 in odds or something like that, and then you go on the website and you see two put there at price at 2.5, which is obviously like a huge edge. but it's actually like it's a huge discrepancy too. So do you ever like look at those kind of situations and you're like, surely I'm missing something here because this odds difference is almost too big?
Yeah, well, that's often happened. Actually, I would look and I could see my odds, and exactly as you've said there. Actually, and I thought, no, I must be getting something wrong. But I suppose I seem to other bettors, and I have a close friend actually that is and a football tipster. But he regularly says, don't. He said, don't always think that you're wrong. Maybe they're wrong. So instead of backing off it, I kind of focus in more and just, you say, look, yeah, maybe I'm missing out this, or maybe, like you could go in between. But even at that, I have seen that often where at the beginning of the week I could see a team maybe 2.4, 2.5 that I have them at 2, but come the weekend it's into 2.2 or 2.25, and they're saying, you were probably right. So I suppose there is a case for backing, especially maybe in Liga, playing earlier in the week if you can, if the liquidity is there. But I find that really it doesn't build up until near the day as such. So sometimes you can look at odds maybe in a Wednesday or Thursday, and come to Friday it's after lowering. But I find that come near kickoff, you often find the risk back out. They say that the nearer you come to kickoff is the closest to most accurate market you have. So I suppose if you wait till near kickoff, if that's true, they can drift back out. So sometimes it's just a case of a balancing act, really.
Yeah, and is it as simple as anything that's above my price I'm happy to take, or is there like a price something at 2 and it's at 2.02 or 2.03, then you're just like, oh, well, I do have a slight edge here in my mind, but is it really, am I that confident in it that I'm happy to just take an edge off a couple of points?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say it wouldn't be as simple as if I have it at 2 and it's 2.05 or whatever, I would look at that and I'd say, yeah, look, that's a nice little edge. But I'd also look to see, is what other factors, is 2.05, is it really, do I need to, would I be expecting maybe 2.1 or whatever? So I just look closer, say obviously home or away, recent form. It wouldn't be recent form. I'd use it as a guide, but I wouldn't use it as, it wouldn't sway me toward bet. So I may look at, say, a team's goal scoring stats. Or one thing I do like to look at actually is a team that scored 8 goals. I'm really attracted to teams that scored 8 goals. I'm not sure. I'm sure a lot of punters use it, but I find that teams that score goals in the last 15 minutes of games, that they can be very reliable for goals bets, and also for match odds, because it just gives an indication that a team is, that they keep going for 90 minutes, that they're, that you always have a chance of getting a goal. So I think lucky teams that score 8 goals, I think, can be, it doesn't. It's probably not very important for a lot of bettors, but myself and my other friend who's a football tipster, we've got a nice bit of success out of it. So late goal teams would sway it for me if I saw a team that I had them at 2 or 2.05. If I saw that they had good late goal stats, I would go with them then. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's very, very interesting, man. I've never heard anyone, I guess, talk about late goals being
Yes,
a
it's probably
really big.
unusual.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to hear that that's like a determining factor for you. Like if a team's scoring late goals, then you rate them as a really good team. I think that it's really interesting insight. How do you, I guess, measure the success of your bets? Is it as simple as I'm beating the closing line, or is it as simple as wins and losses? Like, what's your most determining metric? Like maybe it's even just making sure the odds at closing are the same as the odds you had them at earlier in the week.
Yeah, the closing odds would be actually funny enough. I say a lot of my winning bets, the closing odds are often better actually. I don't have the exact stats, but I know from looking at them, I'd often gone in and say, so obviously the closing line is usually important, and it's the true odds. But I just go on my overall, the long term profit is the big thing I'd look at, really. I think I've proofed over 1,000 bets now. I think in 2019 my ROI was 3.96, almost 4. Last year it was 4.01. So it's a similar level. So I do target. I had hoped 2021 I've targeted 5% ROI. Not quite there at the moment. It's probably the last few months have been, they haven't been hugely profitable. They're doing okay, but I would still think that I'm probably due a good few months. So I just go on long term as my big thing. I think if I can manage to get 4% over 1,000 bets, I target 5, so I'm not that far off it. So I think my success I'd base it on how my bets have gone long term. I don't take huge notice. I've had bad months, I've had good months. I think was it in 2019? I just 2 really bad months in a row. Was it September? I dropped 6 points in September. I dropped 12 points in October, and it was really bad. But then, funnily enough, November I picked up and 5 points, and December I picked up 11 points. So it tends. I think variance will always be a problem, but it tends to balance out. But if I can get as close as I can to 5% ROI, I'd be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, for instance, if you were, let's just say the last 6 months you've had a 4% ROI, but then you've looked back and seen that you've beaten the closing line, or you barely beat the closing line, or maybe you've been pretty neutral with it. Would that stress you out at all, or have you worried that, all right, I am in profits? That's the main thing, but beating the market, I'm not really doing that.
You do. You have to be eating the closing line long term to make a profit. Obviously, if you're not, it stands to reason that you won't make a profit. I suppose if I look back at 6 months and if I saw a string of bets not beating closing line, and if I was making profit, I was saying, look, how many of those bets, am I just being lucky? Maybe I don't have the edge I think I have. So I wouldn't get stressed out, though. No, I don't. I probably, as a punter, I'm probably quite patient enough. I don't. If I have a real good run, I don't get too high, or if I have a real bad one, I don't tend to get too low. I try to remain balanced enough. I suppose, look, I'm doing it. I'm punting. I'm betting for a number of years now, and I've seen the ups, I've seen the downs, I've seen great months, bad months. So no, I'm pretty level-headed enough when it comes to bad runs and good runs. So it's serving well so far.
Yeah, is if you had to put down everything into a small little box and say this is why I'm profitable from football betting, what would that be? Because I guess most people would, rate their opinion when it comes to certain sports. They always think that their opinion is the right opinion when it comes to football or whatever sport that they watch or follow. Why would you say maybe it's the thoroughness of the research you do? I'll just let you answer the question.
Yeah, no, I'd probably just say that I when I watch a game, I mostly turn off the commentary. I don't tend to listen to commentary because I just try to form my own opinion. But I feel I can read teams fairly well, especially in the leagues I concentrate on. I just feel I have good handle on the teams. I know the players. I know the players well. I know the teams, what style of play they play. I know if they go behind, what way they're going to play, or what substitutes I'm going to change it. So I just think by focusing on fewer leagues, you can know the teams better, and hopefully, well, my hope is that I know the teams better than others probably do. So that's I probably say that I just have a better knowledge of teams than others. That's probably would be my that's what I'd pin it down to.
Yeah, and correlating that to betting odds, is it as simple as you giving a probability of a team winning? So maybe you allocate a percentage, or do you actually just I guess, surpass the percentage part and just actually give them a price?
I suppose I just give them a price. Really, I suppose I'm old style. I put a price to everything. Really, that's just been my way for many years. So I suppose, look, a price is a percentage chance of winning as such. So it's the same thing. But yeah, I just put a price to it, and if if the if I see a big difference in my price and the market, I straight away that's one game I'm going to be interested in, either for goals or for Asian line match odds, whichever. So, and the reason I started, actually last season, I introduced both teams to score more so into my betting as well, which has worked pretty. It's it's doing okay as well. So another bet I like to play in.
Yeah, nice, mate. Interesting thing about your service is that you're using betting exchanges as opposed to bookmakers. Do you want to kind of explain why that is that you do that?
Well, I suppose I've had many betting accounts, as in, say, we call them soft bookies, the likes of, say, Bet365, William Hill, I presume you're familiar with Labrooks, Paddy Power, Boyle Sports. I've had numerous accounts of those, so they just don't last. They don't last if you're backing on, if you're backing horses, if you're backing greyhounds, football. If you were probably just backing football only, you would make them last, because they have a big margin to their football prices. You couldn't, in my opinion, you couldn't make a profit long term on football betting backing with those bookies. I know the likes of Pinnacle, obviously, they're a different story. You can with those, but I just found that Betfair was, there was no problem getting on. There was no problem. Liquidity, fair enough, can be an issue at times, but if you wait long enough, you will get it. The odds are generally, I'm quite happy with the odds that are there. As saying the big main leagues, there's no problem getting bets on. The Secunda can be a bit difficult, I suppose. Early morning of the day of the match, you're probably better off going, late afternoon, early evening. But I find that generally, you will always get matched. So also, when I spoke to Pete about starting up this service, we just felt it was probably the fairest way. It gives everyone a chance of getting on the bets. It gives everyone, that they can on at a price. There was no point me, say, putting up a price from a bookie on a Wednesday and knowing that, maybe 5 people out of 60 or 70 might get on. It's easy to say, oh, look, we were on at this price, but it's not realistic. So it's probably the fairest way, and that's the way I bet myself. So that's basically why I'm happy to use Betfair.
Have you figured out, I guess, the best time to use the exchanges, like hours before a game or days before a game? Because they're a completely different market, or just a completely different kettle of fish compared to a standard soft bookie.
Yeah, they're way different. I suppose with La Liga and with the French League One, I would be happy to go the morning of the game. I'd be happy enough to basically, if the odds are there in the morning on the major leagues, if there is enough liquidity, which there mainly is, and I'm happy with the odds, I'll put that bet up. That's fine. But whereas with the Sunday, it's probably you have to wait until maybe, if it's an evening game, late afternoon, early evening. I know last season I sent out one email in the morning, maybe with 1 or 2 bets in La Liga, maybe the same in the Segunda. But I'm thinking for the coming season, I may hold off and send out Segunda bets until probably 2 or 3 hours before kickoff. Say tonight, for example, I gave a bet in the Champions League qualifier. It's between Shamrock Rovers and Slovan Bratislava. But today, when I looked at probably lunchtime, there was very little liquidity. So I left it until 6 a.m. this evening, 2 hours before kickoff. So then there was, liquidity was good then, even though the odds had shortened up a little bit, but it was still above the odds I was happy with. So that's probably one issue with the lower leagues, say in Ireland or in the Champions League qualifiers, Secunda. The later you leave it, the more liquidity you have. Whereas for the top leagues, any time the day of the match, even I tend to do all my betting on games the day of the match. I just find it, I have so much to go through. I just find it. I look at it day by day. I look at the games as they come. So that's the approach I work to.
Yeah, do you ever have, I guess, customers struggling to find the liquidity if they're a little bit late? I assume you're kind of all just stealing liquidity from each other.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a few emails from guys saying that, that I think last season there was a few games where at times I could release a bet maybe at 11 a.m. and by 2 o'clock it's just gone completely, and they just contact me and say, look, I couldn't get on their price. So in that situation, my advice is never chase down a price. Just don't go chasing down a price just because I put up. Either put it into Betfair, just put in the price I advised, or else go in and play at the beginning, especially say on the over goals. If it's over goals, you'll often match there for 10 minutes quite easily. On match odds, look, you may miss a bet, but I prefer miss a bet than be chasing it down, because over a season it'll probably even out. I don't believe in chasing down a price. Just look, if you're going to miss winners, you're going to miss losers, but you just have to shrug your shoulders. But it's not a huge issue. It's not a huge issue, really.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Mate, COVID's obviously played havoc in football and all sports around the world. Do you have I guess you probably had to change up your approach maybe a little bit as the seasons have gone on the last couple of years. What's your approach when crowds do come back? Which it looks like that's going to be a thing now. It was pretty successful throughout the Euros, and I have no idea what the situation's like in Spain, but I assume that crowds are going to start coming back now. How do you approach that? There's the problem with home advantage. Maybe I don't even know. You've heard people say that there's been less goals throughout COVID too. So how are you going to approach all of that?
I think initially, well, apparently in Spain there are 80% crowds from the start of the season. That's at the moment, but it's evolving all the time. That can change. So my initial thinking is goals. Yeah, I think goals, especially as mentioned earlier, late goals. I did see a lack of late goals in games with no crowds, because obviously if a team is behind, say going into the last 15-20 minutes of it, and if you have a crowd back, they just feed off the adrenaline of the crowd, whereas that's been a big miss. So I think for the first few weeks of the season, I'd be looking at more goals. Even at the Euros, I've seen, I think, compared to Euro 2016, goals were there was a lot more goals scored. So I think players have been used to it over the last year, playing in front of empty stands, and now all of a sudden they came to Euros and there's an atmosphere, and you could see. I think you could see it in players. You could see it. So especially late on, I felt that games are, and I suppose the amount of own goals was also noticeable in the Euros, which maybe it could be the nervousness from having a crowd there, which I would say had a big bearing on it too. So I think when the crowds come back, goals will be one thing I will be looking at.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. It'll be very interesting to see how the market reacts. Maybe the market will. You would just assume, like, you could see an instance where the market might overreact a little bit, and it's just about trying to figure out those, or at least find those little edges here and there. Is there like particular, how do you look at it from a team perspective? Are there certain teams that you might in Spain that you look at and think, all right, they're going to be a lot better when crowds come back? And on the other hand, are there teams that you look at and think, they've had a good run throughout COVID, and I think maybe they'll go on a little downfall once the pressures, maybe feel pressure a bit more from crowds?
Yeah, I suppose there are certain teams. There are teams. Well, Sevilla would be a team in La Liga, say, who actually had a great season last year, but their stadium, the the Piswana is real atmospheric, and the crowd are real near to the pitch. So you would think with a crowd back there that that they can perform even better and push on from last season. Then there are certain teams who I would, who may have overachieved last season because maybe the players played better without the pressure of a crowd. I know Bettor are probably a team. They're from Seville as well, obviously. That they seem to flourish last season, but the type of players they have, I'm not so sure if you had 40,000 shouting behind them whether those players would be quite as up for it. So there are certain teams I'd be lucky at to oppose and also to side with when crowds come back, because they're definitely, some players react better obviously to they can feed off a crowd, where some players just they don't seem to the pressure just doesn't suit them and they tend to go hiding. So maybe players that flourished last season with no crowds, we'll notice this season that they're not as good as we thought.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting approach to take to betting, because I guess nowadays it's very data led, and everyone loves a statistic, but I guess the mental side, or the emotional side of football and understanding players and teams, like, do you think there's like an edge there in itself, rather than, I guess a lot of the data now is kind of, or edges that you can find from data are almost pointless because it's all publicly available. So is that something you try and incorporate into your pricing, is maybe taking more of a emotional look at the game, more a mental approach, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, I definitely think it is. Yeah, because there is, as you said, data is it's everywhere. I think if you're going to if you want to have a bet on any football game now, and you can just open up any website with you get expected goals, it's there for everyone to see. So as you say, there isn't much knowledge. So yeah, I'd feed off more the emotional side of. That's why late goals, which I know it's an unusual one, but if I think I'd often look at two teams that are both of this, are renowned for scoring late goals, and rather than looking at their over and 2.5 goal stats or over goal stats, I would base my bet more on if they scored more late goals than if they had more over 2.5 goals, if you know what I mean. I think a team that scores late goals, or they're always worth siding with, either for in the match odds market or in the goals market. But I think it's overlooked, really. I suppose it's I think when I had this conversation with my other mate, we both felt, this is something that's been missed. So it has worked well. Not for every team, obviously, but for certain teams who are consistently scoring late goals, it's definitely paid off for us. Yeah.
Nice, mate. Good stuff. I love that little nugget of the late goal stuff. I think it's a really interesting way of looking at it. Mate, one more question for you. A question that I ask most of the guests that come on. I guess just one piece of advice, or maybe you've got a couple, mate, that you would give to people who are either starting betting or been involved in the industry for a long time, on I guess how they could take their game to the next level.
I suppose if you're starting betting, I would say specialize. I suppose they've obviously heard it numerous times, but I think specialize, and a betting bank. Betting bank obviously is hugely important. I've seen it even work in a betting shop. There are people who recklessly come in on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday, and they lose their first few bets, they chase their losses, and it's just all gone. Specialize. Don't overload yourself. If you're into horse racing, stick to horse racing. If you're into jumps racing, stick to jumps. Don't be getting too caught up in the flat. If sprint races are your thing, go with sprint races. You don't have to bet in every race. If football is your thing, if you're comfortable following the Premier League or the French League, La Liga, or whatever, I just say, just concentrate on that. You do see, unfortunately, you see people who have to losing bets, and they could put plenty of time into say Premier League match, maybe spent they did a lot of research, thought they had it figured out. Bet goes down that night. There's a La Liga match on TV, and they're chasing back their losses. That loses all of a sudden. Instead of waiting until the next day for the next Premier League match, their money is gone. So I'd say I think specialise and have patience, and betting banks would be my three main ones. As regards regular punters, I'm sure there's plenty of punters could probably still give me plenty of advice also. I would say like specialising obviously works well for me. I know we said earlier in this that there are people that can manage many leagues, and look, if it works for them, it works for them. They probably they have obviously maybe helped, they have different models or whatever, but I suppose just keeping a clear head, I suppose, is a big thing. If things are going against you, just what's worked before tends to keep working. Just if it stops working for a few weeks, you might have to tweak it or just change it here and there. But don't panic if you run into a bad run. And likewise, if you're in a good run and if you think, oh, this I have this cracked. If you've a run of say, I've 10 over 2.5 goals bets comes up, doesn't suddenly mean like that you've the goals market's cracked. It's the long game. You need to be profitable at. So that's probably the two things I'd push on it.
Yeah, it's terrific advice, mate. I really like what you say about specialization. I think it's a really interesting thing, because I think people who are regular bettors, even if even if like so far you've not even been a long-term profitable bettor, I think if you spend enough time betting and you kind of understand what odds have been distributed to certain teams or sports just over time, you've just seen so many betting odds that you kind of understand like prices and stuff like that. I think if you then on top of that put in a lot of research and just watch a lot of a certain team or a certain league, I think there's most certainly edges there. I mean, I don't watch any football at all, mate, except for watching Arsenal, really, and just from watching Arsenal and understanding a decent bit about betting, when I see some of the opening prices on Arsenal, I look at them all the time and think that's right, that's wrong, and almost all the time, by the time it closes, the odds have moved to where I think they should have been, but. That's just from literally watching every Arsenal game, and that's a hobby of mine. So maybe that's like a place where people can start. I mean, the problem there is that you've got biases and all that kind of stuff there being a supporter. But yeah, I couldn't agree more on the specialization side. That if you just understand the pricing and all that kind of stuff, if you then just watch enough football of one thing, then you're probably gonna get really good at it.
Yeah, you will. That's the hope on it. But I do think it's hugely important. You see people are happy out doing their accumulators at weekends on different leagues, but that's, as a hobby, that's fine. Once they control it. But if you're serious, you need to specialize and need to narrow it down to certain leagues or even certain teams. Doesn't it? It can be 4 and 5 teams in a league that you have a real good handle on, and that can bring you lots of success also.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a good question you can ask yourself before you place any bettors. You can just say, "Has anyone else done more research than me to conclude why the odds are where they're at?" Because most of the time for me, it's like, "Yeah, I've only thought about this for half an hour. There's probably someone that's thought about it for 2 hours." So maybe that's a good piece of advice. No, mate, I've really enjoyed talking to you today, Liam. I think there's, like I've said, there's been some really great pieces of advice for people out there. I know we're on a bit of a lag right now, but no, it's all right, mate. I guess maybe just finish up by letting people know where they can find you and your service, and any exciting projects you've got going on at the moment you want to tell people about.
You'll find me at my tipster service I run through the Smart Betting Club, so I'm sure people will be familiar with that. It's a great website to log into. Actually, there's some brilliant pointers there for anyone who wants to start out in betting, or anyone even who's a regular bettor. There's some great advice, and it's totally no affiliates, bookmaker, no bookmaker on site, so it's worth to go. So I'm there. You'll find me in their premium section under the Poacher. I'm also on Twitter at the Poacher9. So I tweet. I often put up. I just tweet often when I advise a bet, or I often tweet my results. My results are proof to the Smart Betting Club. So there's a full results page on my page there. So that's real funny. As regards any projects coming up, I suppose it's a quietish time, but I did a nice winner tonight in the Champions League qualifiers. So it was Shamrock Rovers. They won 2-1 against Slovan Bratislava. I gave them in the Asian handicap. So they're just a team I'm familiar with, and I'd seen the game last week, and they've just played an extreme heat. I just thought back with fans and with more Irish weather that they had a lot going for them. I will be betting on the Irish Premier Division for the remainder of the summer, and then the leagues will start up again in August. So looking forward to those. It'll be the same again, the Spanish leagues, along with French League One and Champions League and Europa League to a lesser extent. But as I said, my main focus will be on Spain. So that won't be long rolling around. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, awesome, mate. It's seems like you've got things going well, mate. And yeah, like you said about Smart Betting Club, we had Pete on the podcast about probably 100 episodes ago, mate, a long time ago. So yeah, for anyone interested in learning more about Smart Betting Club and I guess the ins and outs of tipsters, then go and listen to that. But yeah, thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks once again, Liam, for coming on. Please make sure everyone, if you got a bit of time, do a quick rate and review of the podcast, and subscribe to us wherever you listen. Give the video a like if you can. And if you're looking to implement some of the strategies we talked about today or weekly on the podcast, and also the value betting ones, start a free week trial of Trademate Sports. Liam, thank you once again, and we'll have to catch up sometime soon.
Cheers, Alex. Yeah, look forward to catching up again. Cheers.
See ya.